Obviously, the story that I think really captivated America over the Thanksgiving holiday season was the railroad workers trying to just get some basic respect and rights for themselves and having the political system step in the way of that. And we are very honored to be joined here as we continue the show by Reese Murtagh, who is a roadway mechanic and a member of Machinists Local 696, with us from Richmond, Virginia. Reese, thanks so much for being with us.
Glad to be here. How y'all doing?
You know, we're doing well. We can't complain. Just pushing forward, as they say. You know, one of the things I wanted to start with asking you here, Reese, I mean, obviously, I think a lot of people, there's the politics of it, which became a big issue, and sick days, of course, which a lot of people heard about. But I know it goes a lot deeper than that in terms of what you all are really faced with in terms of the job. So I was hoping you could just talk a little bit more, you know, even just beyond the sick days issue, not that it's not important, but of what railroad workers really have to face day in and day out.
So around 2017, we saw something called precision scheduled railroading show up. And this is just a cute little name for when a hedge fund takes over and how they basically decimated the railroads and turned us into a skeleton crew. So we have lost about half our membership in District Lodge 19. We primarily work on locomotives and heavy equipment. CSX was ground zero for the PSR railroading model. Hunter Harrison showed up and just tore it to pieces. So what's going on now is the members that have stuck around, the brave souls that are still with us, they are now having to work forced overtime. So, and it's just an insult because, you know, these members that work in our locomotive shops saw all their union brothers get run off by a hedge fund. Now they're forced to work, you know, they come in for an 8-hour shift and, you know, they got 4 extra hours to work, and they're told sometimes when they're in the parking lot, you know, trying to go home. And if they don't stay and work, it counts against them. And they had these ridiculous attendance policies where they start accruing attendance points. And now you have a disciplinary action because you're just trying to work an 8-hour shift. So there's some issues on the railroads in North America.
And of course, what we saw in Congress was them push through this bill that didn't include paid sick leave. And, you know, the media is reporting this is going to cause another exodus. I mean, you're already saying that you've lost all these railroad workers. This is going to cause another exodus of workers. Can you talk a little bit about, because I don't think people understand like how much is transported across the United States using railroads. It's not just, it's not just people trying to get on the Amtrak to go from DC to New York or Philadelphia or whatever. It's also food and fuel. Can you talk a little bit about how important the railroads are across America in terms of actually making the country function?
Yeah, so I traveled from Southern Florida to the Canadian border from 2018 to 2021. I was a system production traveling mechanic. So I saw big plants where they would fill train cars full of natural gas. You know, we haul chlorine for, you know, municipal water supplies. I mean, you name it, you know, it is on the rails.
You know,
and in sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, go, please.
Well, I was just going to say, in terms of what was being asked for, there was obviously a strike was being threatened. In terms of what was being asked for, what is it that was being asked for? Because it wasn't much.
Are you talking about the sick days here?
Yeah.
Okay. So let me just kind of break down how we got here, because there's a little bit of confusion. So anyway, so back in July, we had the PEB board, which is what Biden appointed. And that's where basically the union and the carriers kind of come in and argue, right? So the union went in asking for 15 sick days. They met, they argued. The tentative agreement came out. It included 0 sick days. So then we saw 9 unions hold on to, basically go out to the last minute, right? They ran the clock down. We saw Marty Walsh and Biden, try to make the miracle deal they made. And the miracle deal that Biden and Walsh made included 3 unpaid sick days, but only on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, and he had to schedule them 30 days in advance. So that was the improved tentative agreement, and that's actually what got forced on all Class 1 North American railroad workers. So then all kinds of kicking the can down the road, let's cool off for 30 days. Let's cool off for 45 more days, right? I mean, so much shenanigans and cooling off, right? Then we got to the statement from Biden. I believe it was November 28th. He says, I am calling on Congress to pass legislation immediately to adopt the tentative agreement between railroad workers and operators without any modifications or delay to avert a potentially crippling national rail shutdown. So that is where Biden forced a contract on about 50,000 workers who voted against it. Now, important to note there's no sick days in what he forced on us, right? I read that verbatim for what he put out in a press release. So where did these sick days come from? It came from Congressman Jamal Bowman, did some last minute shuffling and put out a second bill. It wasn't, and that's important to note, right? So they didn't put them on one bill because that would have some teeth. They put 2 out there. And I'm not the most political person, but depending on who you ask, this was more of a symbolic gesture. And obviously it did not pass the Senate. Republicans voted against it. And, the press release that came across the national media was Republicans shot down the sick days, right? Which is true, but misleading. Yes, they shot it down and they're evil people for doing this. But Biden could have said, hey, force this contract and give these hardworking railroad workers sick days, right? So that is kind of how we got here.
I mean, honestly, just stunning on so many levels. And I guess one element of it too, listening to you, Reese, that feels like an important element of this is the forcing of the contract. I mean, I was lucky enough to be raised with 2 parents who at different times have been union members. And, I was raised under the belief that if you're a worker on the job, that you have the right to go on strike to protect your rights. If you have to, you don't want to, but you have that right. I mean, how does it feel to basically be told by the government of the United States that regardless of your own life, your family and everything, you just have to accept it? You can't strike.
Well, there's a whole lot of wrong happened there. First of all, it sets a dangerous precedent, obviously, for us, right? I mean, basically, it's essentially taking a baseball bat and then smashing our kneecaps in. Like, we're going to be limping around for years after this nonsense. But also, this is the president of the United States who is a pro-labor president, right? And, to see him do this, other corporations are watching, right? There's other, big unions who also, if they strike, it's going to cause some disruption to the economy, right? So everyone's watching this. So it set a dangerous precedent. It really did. And the reason, I also need to point out, the reason Biden is getting so much hate and there's all these really hilarious memes going around, and, and in my opinion, he deserves it because he's parading around as this pro worker, savior to the working class. And then, like, when you just go ahead and you gut him, it doesn't look good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's also the squad members, right? Like, the squad is supposed to be extra progressive, not your typical Democrats. And I believe many of them, if I'm not mistaken, at least 3 of them, one of whom you mentioned, Jamal Bowman, actually voted to push this through. And I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
Like I said, I felt like this thing was basically like a freight train that running down a mountain with no brakes. It was, and this is my opinion, this thing was going to pass. I felt like the sick days, like I say, I think Congressman Bowman, and I know, some squad backed him up on that. I felt like it was a symbolic gesture. And, what it did achieve is it started a conversation. So, obviously, railroad workers who carried the railroads, through an entire pandemic on their backs deserve more than a token gesture of a sick day. Don't get me wrong. Like, we're used to getting our kneecaps bashed in. So, take what I'm saying with a grain of salt, I guess, because we're used to having no one look out for us.
Well, I think one of the things that is notable here is that railroad workers themselves have, like yourself, like you here, Reese, been out more in the media, talking more and helping inform people. And I know, you and others, in your lodge are looking to make some changes and to get the voice of railroad workers back out there. I know you're part of a slate that's running for office. Talk about that if you could, who you guys have brought together and what you're looking to do if you're able to, get into office there in the union.
So basically, when this whole thing unfolded was kind of just a slow motion, derailment, right? And, the question is, it should be asked by all railroad workers collectively, where do we go from here, right? I mean, the carriers, it's an all-out war against us. This pro-labor government isn't looking out for us. Our own unions, especially District Lodge 19, sold out their memberships. We actually voted to strike, and they broke our strike, but that's a different conversation. So basically, where do we go from here, right? So, I talked to a lot of our members, and we decided to say, hey, you know what? If our union won't fight for us, we will become the leaders in our union and take it back. And next time, this is going to be different. Our nomination vote is February 3rd. I have a team of 12 really pissed off diesel mechanics, and we're out for blood. We're taking it back. We're tired of our unions having no teeth. Next time we're not blinking. All right. If Congress forces a contract, I'd rather go down fighting than begging.
Well, I can't agree with that more, and I think it's exciting. We'll definitely check back in with you to see, how it all goes and keep covering this story and not let it just be a one and done kind of thing. Reese, I know you got a lot going on, man, and we really appreciate you being willing to join us here on the Freedom Side.
Had fun, guys. Thank you.
Right on. Thank you.